Now, climate change experts are becoming more and more concerned as temperatures across the world keep rising. Now, last month was the hottest September ever recorded, and 2023 could just be the hottest year yet. Professor Tafadzwa Mabhaudhi, a climate change expert from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, joins us now. Professor, a very good morning to you. So these are global temperatures and global phenomena that are being expressed. And looking at these numbers, it says that surface air temperature was 16.38 degrees Celsius, which is above the temperatures, the average temperatures that were experienced between the years 1991 and 2020. What are the major factors that are affecting this global warming?
So what we do know, and thank you for having me on the show, what we do know for certain is that September has been the hottest, the fourth consecutive hottest month in 2023. And that means for certain 2023 is said to be the hottest year on record in terms of the records that have been kept since 1940. What is driving this currently? We are assuming that the El Nino, which has been developing since June, is driving the warming of temperatures, which has been observed in the Northern Hemisphere summer. But we also understand and do appreciate that human-induced climate change is playing a significant hand in terms of exacerbating the warming of temperatures.
Now, the El Nino phenomenon that you've just spoken about, it warms the waters in the southern Pacific, and that then ends up resulting in the hotter weather. How long are we expecting this phenomenon to be active?
So typically, El Nino lasts for at least 2 years on minimum. It's a cyclic event. So we've just come out of a triple La Nina phase. So we had 3 years or 3 seasons of La Nina, which brought above average rainfall, especially for us in Southern Africa. And now we're entering into an El Nino phase. So at the very minimum, we expect to see at least 2 years or 2 seasons of El Nino.
So what does this mean? If September was the hottest month recorded, does this mean that for the next 2 years, we are going to be experiencing escalated temperatures?
So far, I would say since 2016, we have been breaking records in terms of, observed temperatures and warming of temperatures. And this year in particular, we have seen records being broken since June during the Northern Hemisphere summer. And with that, we have seen also accompanied extreme weather events in terms of floods, wildfires, happening in several regions of the world. So just given by the trend, and if we continue on this trajectory, given that people are not changing their behavior in terms of fossil fuel emissions, we would very well be expecting further warming in terms of the climate and the weather.
You mentioned human behavior as being an integral part of why we find ourselves here. Should there be some divine intervention and indeed the emission of fossil fuels reduces and climate activists do what they do, how long would it take for us to start seeing a reversal of these weather conditions and I guess a renormalization of our temperatures?
I don't think we would see a reversal, but what we would expect is to see a halt in terms of further increase in the extremes that we've been observing. And critical to this is the fact that this year we might breach the 1.5 degree Celsius threshold that is set in the Paris agreements. But if we do halt further emissions, then that breach would not be a permanent breach of the Paris Accords. So we would sort of stay within the patterns that we are observing right now, and would not see any further increases in terms of extreme weather events. So, but if we continue emitting, if we continue with the fossil fuel consumption that we are at, we are likely to breach that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, and that will have permanent implications and effects on global climate and weather systems.
What's very worrying, Professor, about what you're saying is that this is irreversible. The best we can do is just stay where we are. And the likelihood of that even happening is quite reduced. What impact is this going to have then on food supply and just global availability and food security?
The impacts are quite significant, if I may say so. So, for example, this year we are anticipating El Nino, and for us in Southern Africa, it means reduced, below average rainfall or high likelihood of drought, increasing water scarcity, high temperatures, high risk of crop failure. What that then affects, like what we saw in the last strong El Nino phase that we had in 2016, where we had record drought, was also an accompanying increase in food prices. So you can imagine already in South Africa and much of the world, because also of the effect of the Russia-Ukraine war on food security and food supply, that would exacerbate the food security situation and increase food prices even further, pushing people further into hunger, especially in vulnerable regions of the world. So the implications are quite significant from a food security perspective. There's also the aspect of diseases that, as climate warms and temperatures warm up in certain areas, it means new diseases that were previously not there start to spread into those areas. And that's not just from a food or agricultural perspective, but also from a human health perspective and the implications on water security and water quality. So the risks are high, and the urgency for us to act and halt further emissions and change the trajectory is quite urgent and dire.
Professor Tafadzwa Mabhaudhi, thank you so much for your time. I must say it's such an eye-opener, really just awakens you to the state of the climate, and that hot weather is not just hot weather, but the ripple effects that it has on food security, on water security. He is a climate change expert at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.